please make your mortgage payments, guys. I know there was now, in the last 8 days, we've had 10 million people file for unemployment. I have received so many text messages, so many emails from so many people being like, hey, should I take advantage of this forbearance thing? My bank's telling me I could do it. Don't do it, guys. It's not free money, okay? So you understand, all a forbearance is, it's not a forgiveness, it's a forbearance. All that happens is they go ahead and they defer your payment. So let's say you skip April, you skip May, you skip June, you skip July. Well, guess what happens in August? All of that is due plus interest, okay? This isn't like free money out there. Now, the Fed totally screwed up, and they basically are not even having to prove that you need to actually have been laid off. All you have to do is affirm, under penalty and perjury of law, which good luck for them prosecuting on it, that you've been affected financially by COVID. It's so vague. So many people are going to be taking advantage of this. Please don't do it. And let me explain to you why this is so important. Is if you go ahead and you take advantage of this, the way it works is the mortgage companies will not be collecting your mortgage payments. And the amount of stimulus that's being provided to servicers is absolutely minuscule. We've now had 10 million people file for unemployment in the last 8 days alone. Okay, that's just the last 8 days alone. We never saw more than 600,000 in a week during the greatest housing crisis ever. So there is a massive amount. Employment is probably going to reach at some point for temporarily at 20%. So please have the financial sense that if you can afford your mortgage payment and you own a house and you care about how much equity you have in that house, make that mortgage payment no matter what. Stop paying on your car loan. Stop paying on your credit cards. Sell your toys. Do anything before you stop and go into a forbearance. Now, if you and your wife are both laid off and you have no savings at all, then yes, it is a last resort. Do go into forbearance. But that's really probably only going to be about 1 out of every 8 people that are actually applying for forbearance based on what the analysis came out and said. And why this is so important, just so you guys understand, and how this will absolutely obliterate our mortgage industry and our economy and the values of homes if this gets abused, is because of this. So what ends up happening is you don't want to make your mortgage payment. Well, let's say you have an FHA loan. On that FHA loan, Wells Fargo, who you have your FHA loan with, has to still, even if you don't make that loan, has to still make those mortgage payments, the principal and interest mortgage payments, to the investors that back those loans, okay? That means they still got to be writing these checks. So even if $1 billion out of $100 billion of loans they service goes bad, that's $49 million a month in payments. That's just 1% of their servicing portfolio, and that's only one lender. So you can imagine. So people go and they stop making their payments. Well, what ends up happening? Now what happens is 4, 5, 6 months down the road into forbearance, everything passes. Now it's time to come up to your payments. Well, what'd you do? Your $2,000 a month mortgage payment, you now just deferred for 5 months for $10,000. Now that becomes due plus interest, your normal interest rate. It's not free. So now how are you going to write your $10,000 check to your mortgage company? Well, because you didn't save it, right? So now what happens? Now you go into default. What happens when you go into default? Okay, now they can start the foreclosure process. What do we have going on right now more than any time in history? The greatest amount of equity in homes. So now all these banks out there have just gotten absolutely obliterated and are cash poor. The stimulus from the government was nonsense. Now, what are they going to do? Now they're in the position of all these defaulted loans. They have investors and they're poor on cash. They got to now start the foreclosure process, and people can't get caught up. And unlike before, where people had little to no equity, so it didn't make sense for banks to foreclose, now people have lots of equity, more equity than ever. So now your $200,000 mortgage that is worth $300,000, but now you owe 10 grand and you don't have the ability to get it because you don't have the money to do so. And now only one of the two of you is back to work. Now they can start the foreclosure process. And you better believe they're going to be motivated to foreclose, especially against people that really didn't need it in certain cases. And now they go to get an asset that has $100,000 of equity in it. They pay themselves back. They foreclose on that. Now they can go and they sell that house on the house market. Now, when they go to bring those houses on the housing market, what happens? More and more houses start flooding on to that market. What happens? Brings down the value of homes. What happens when it brings down the value of homes? Obviously, everybody starts to lose equity in those homes. So people's biggest nest egg is their retirement and their house. So if the stock market and the 401k just took a beating, house prices, you know what? If only a small amount of people are using the forbearance and the people that really need it and they use it to get out because they've been laid off, we'll be okay. It's going to be rough, but we're going to get through this. But if this is taken advantage of, mark my words, it will give us a housing crisis and a mortgage crisis like nobody has ever seen. We will see equity in people's homes get eaten up. So that $10,000 that you want to kick the can down the road so you have a little bit of extra spending money, or maybe to buy, you're having a problem online shopping or you're kind of worried or something like that. That 10 grand that you're going to defer will be the single worst decision you will ever make with your home because of what could potentially happen, especially if you have good equity and losing that home with not being able to get caught up. And even if you don't do this, but you have a bunch of neighbors around you that are doing this and they start foreclosing on properties, it's going to bring these house values down. And right now we have inventories at an all-time low. Interest rates are great. Yes, this is going to be rough for the next couple months. But please have the fiscal and financial responsibility to make your mortgage payment. If you're employed or you got a little bit of wages cut, sell something, raise money. I promise you, you will look back and you will be so glad you did this. Do not take advantage of forbearance. I have never been more serious about anything in my life. Please do not take advantage of forbearance. It will absolutely hurt you in the long run. And please pass on this message.